Hey there, I hope everybody is doing great. Here we are, August already, and depending on where in the country you live, actually almost I think everywhere in the country, it's just pretty much hot. Not only is it hot, the kids are going back to school. So I know that's different depending on where you live. For some of you, it's going to be kind of how it has always been or has been for the past 5 months or so, with the kids hanging around at home. For me, the kids are actually going back to in-person learning, which we are excited about to get some normalcy back into their lives. But in addition to the heat of summer, the real estate market has been absolutely red hot. So this month in the real estate market update for August, we're going to touch on some of that, what's been going on in the economy, and then specifically what that means to housing. And if you've seen any of the monthly updates I've done recently, you'll know that the projections and what has been forecast has been changing quite a bit. Nobody's been quite sure. In fact, there hasn't been a recession caused by a pandemic in an awfully long time. And so everyone's kind of been trying to figure it out. And there's been a lot of differing opinions. And the one thing that's true, especially this month, is some of the forecasts that were made just a month ago have now changed yet again. And there are some things going on that are rather surprising to many people. So let's go ahead and dig right into it. So what we're seeing right now, as the Wall Street Journal points out, is the strong economic or a strong economic recovery depends on effective and sustained containment of COVID-19. And that doesn't really come as any surprise. We're in a recession that has primarily impacted the service and transportation industries. So airline, hospitality, hotels, motels, going away, car rental companies, restaurants, bars, things like that. And the unemployment that has been associated with that, as we've touched on, although it's spilled over into other sectors of the economy, it's basically been contained in those service sector industries. And it hasn't had a huge impact on directly on housing as many thought it would, which is why some of those forecasts are actually being modified and changed. When you look at the economy overall, though, it's definitely had an impact, and it's definitely been fairly severe. So if you go back just to April, okay, this was the forecast that was put out by these five top banks: Goldman Sachs, Morgan, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, on what was going to happen in quarter two as a result of the pandemic. And you can see the consensus was that GDP was going to fall by about 31%. And they actually were pretty close. I think the actual number ended up being 32%, if I recall. So it has been the steepest economic decline for a quarter that we have ever seen. As a result of that, when you look at what is going on now, there was a lot of speculation on, is it going to be a V-shaped recovery? Is it going to be more of a W-shaped recovery? Is it going to flatten out? A lot of different thoughts and opinions on that. And I think the honest answer depends on what industry you're talking about. For real estate, as you're going to see in just a little bit, I mean, it definitely dropped off fast and has been a virtual vertical line straight back up. Other industries, airports or airlines, transportation, hospitality, not so much, but they are starting to get back closer to, I don't want to say normalization, because they're still down in some instances 48% over where they were a year ago, but everything is moving in the right direction. Now, Lisa Shallett from Morgan Stanley, she makes an interesting comment here. Indeed, the worst ever GDP reading could be followed by the best ever growth in the third quarter. And that kind of shows the speed of the recovery that many have been hoping for, depending on what happens with COVID, in that after the sharpest recorded drop in GDP, we could then see the highest amount of growth, quarterly growth, that we've ever seen before. Now, those same analysts that made the prediction for quarter two, here's what they're expecting, and they are currently forecasting for quarter three. So you can see Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are expecting 25% positive GDP growth. Bank of America, Wells Fargo lagging a little bit behind that. And then when you look at these additional three forecasts that have now come out from the New York Federal Reserve, the Conference Board, and CNBC, you can see that again, right around 17 to 20% growth is what is being forecast for the third quarter. So the economy is definitely moving in the right direction. Remains to be seen what happens if we have another wave, but the way the latest numbers have been going, I mean, even for me here in Texas, which has been one of the highest states, we are continuing to see declines, not only in infections, but hospitalizations and therefore death counts as well, which is great news. When we look at the housing side of things, here's what Realtor.com had to say. Despite the crippling and ongoing coronavirus pandemic, millions out of work, a recession, a national reckoning over systematic racism, on a highly contentious presidential election just around the corner, the residential real estate market is staging an astonishing rebound. And we are seeing that over and over and over. I mean, in North Texas, Frisco, Texas, and Temecula, California, where my teams are, we're just seeing activity that is unbelievable. Mortgage loan applications are way up for 11 straight months now, I believe it is. And it's just going gangbusters. The pandemic has seemed to create not an environment that crippled housing, but it's been one that supported housing. It's had a whole lot more people want to move into home ownership. Obviously, low mortgage interest rates are fueling that as well, but it's really pushed demand. Demand was high to begin with, and it's only added to that demand going forward. So the pandemic has not stopped consistent home price growth we have witnessed in recent years either, and that's by Quicken Loans. So we've covered this so many times. I mean, real estate pricing is simple supply and demand. What we have right now is constrained supply. You know, in Frisco, Texas, new listings are down year over year. In Temecula, California, new listings are down year over year. Pending sales are up. So demand is up, but that supply has not caught up with that yet. And as such, supply and demand is what drives real estate prices. So it's not surprising to see that the real estate prices here continue to move forward in a positive direction. So specifically with regard to those prices, here's the long range projections on future home prices. Now, if you saw the report from last month, this chart is not going to be much different except the last two. So Fannie Mae, NAR, the Mortgage Bankers Association, Zelman Associates, and Reuters, they are all right around the same. Zillow's a little bit on the fence. They're not exactly sure where it's going to go. You know, they're talking about maybe they'll stay flat, maybe they'll go up a little. They haven't really come in with it. But the two big differences are CoreLogic and House, especially CoreLogic. CoreLogic are someone I know I and a lot of people out there rely on heavily because they're a great source of information. But in last month's market update, if you recall, CoreLogic were forecasting a 6.6% decline in home prices over the next 12 months, which was out of line with what anyone else was forecasting, which again just kind of confirms how there's so many different opinions and different information out there. So this is a big change for them, only forecasting a 1% decline, which they themselves admit could be further revised. Here's what CoreLogic had to say about it. Last month's forecast of a 6.6% home price decline through May of 2021 has been revised as projected unemployment rates show improvement. We keep seeing that. I mean, we keep seeing job gains month after month after month. And that is causing them to revise their projections going forward. You look at the declining supply of homes, it could shield home price growth from the impacts of the current economic uncertainty. And as a result, they're not forecasting prices to decline anywhere like what they were just a month ago. So I know in the markets that I serve, Frisco, Texas, for instance, we're up 4.8% year over year on the median price currently. Temecula, California is running at about 8.4% year over year price growth currently. So those real estate markets are really, really hot. And they're obviously being driven by this increased demand as well as this constrained supply. It's kind of funny. I was talking to a friend of mine that is in real estate on Maui. And I was asking him, how's your market there? What is going on? The interesting thing is what he had to say about Maui kind of confirms what we've just covered in this report. He said several months ago, 6 months ago, you couldn't find a condo to save your life on Maui. They were being bought like crazy because they were used by a lot of people as second homes and Airbnbs. Now, he said there's condos on the market all over the place, and those prices have actually softened somewhat. And that's because they've still got a quarantine in place. Someone flying in has to stay in their condo or in their place that they're staying for 14 days. He said for condos, they can't even use the condo pool. So that has put a huge damper on people renting those properties out, which has caused more to come on the market. Again, hospitality, service sector, like we were saying. He said, on the other hand, you can hardly find a home. Actually, the supply of homes is so low and they've been selling like crazy. And one of the things fueling the demand on Maui has been the fact that a lot of people from Northern California, especially in the tech sector, have actually now seen how easy it is and how effectively they can work remotely are moving to Maui. They're starting to buy and they can conduct their business from there and just make trips back in, maybe monthly or quarterly, whatever is required. So that just kind of shows that changing attitude. In other areas, we're seeing something very, very similar, and that is people moving out of the cities into more of the suburbs in order to get a bigger house. They're finding they can telecommute a little bit more. They're looking for places that can do that, and it's fueling the real estate markets in the suburbs, whereas the actual cities themselves in some areas are the ones taking the brunt of the impact as people are moving out. Last thing I'm going to touch on this month is what we've gone or what we've talked about before with regards to our foreclosures coming. What is going on? There's a lot of people impacted, and there's not being able to pay the bills, and what's going on with mortgage for moratoriums and a lot there. I've been saying the entire time, I don't think we are going to see a wave of foreclosures. This is not like it was in 2008, 2009, 2010. There's just so many differences. The government's, now I think the president just signed an executive order to extend the moratoriums on evictions through the end of the year. The mortgage servicers are actually working with people trying to find a solution so that they do not lose homes. But in a worst case scenario, if someone was unable to afford their current home, the single biggest difference between now and 2007, 8, and 9 is equity. Back then, nobody had any equity. All kinds of creative financing was using. Homes were being, used like ATM machines, cash out refis. No one had any options. That's not the same now. There's a lot of equity that's been gained over the last 10 to 12 years. So if someone is honestly in that position, when you consider how little supply is in the market, someone could sell their home, pay off the mortgage, and still have money to move. And I don't want to sound overly optimistic about that, but it's true. There are options on the table that weren't there. Here's an interesting thing from a survey that was just done. When you look at Q2, home sellers nationwide in Q2 realized an average gain of 75,971 on a typical sale. That means after everything was done, everything was paid off, on average, they were walking away with nearly $76,000. That's up from 66,500 in the first quarter of this year, and it's up from 65,250 in the second quarter of last year. Okay, so based upon these numbers, it's just confirming the fact that there are options out there that didn't exist before. I think I've reported once before that when you look at all mortgage properties in the United States currently, the average estimated equity per household's at 177,000. So that doesn't mean everyone that sells has 177,000. That's the average equity that most mortgage properties have. This equity factor alone makes things substantially different. But again, there's still a lot of this still to be played out. We don't know exactly where it's going to go. And as I hear more information, I'll make sure that I get that word out to you. Hopefully, this has been helpful. If you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to reach out. My contact information is directly below, and we'll see you in September.